She won most talkative in high school, and she has been running her mouth ever since. Welcome to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast with your host, Lisa Fisher.
Okay, kids, we're going to get school today because we've got a nutritionist on, and she's the Ketogenic Nutritionist. I want you to follow her on all the social media. I'll link all that. Temple, I follow all your material. You're preaching to the choir. I love what you're saying. What is your why, though? How did you get to where you are, and why are you doing this?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. Really, my why is because I know what it feels to be incredibly sick, and I know what it feels like to be overweight. And ultimately, I just don't want women to have to live in that state. And I think we could accomplish so much more and just give so much more to society when we feel good and we don't feel that burden.
What is your schooling to get you to the nutritionist part? Is that 4 years of an undergrad of dietetics?
Yeah. So I'm a full-on registered dietitian, which is just saying that I have clinical and hospital experience, and I'm able to speak on chronic disease and lab values and all that stuff. So yes, you're exactly right. It's 4 years of undergrad, and then you have to do a residency, a fellowship at a accredited dietetics hospital, and then you have to be board certified. And so that's the way to become a registered dietitian if you're interested.
Well, from following your social media, you don't parrot what the traditional dietitian says. So are you at odds with your peers? Or do you think this is kind of, maybe there's a groundswell of people saying, you know what, eating 9 to 11 whole grains, probably not the best for our future?
I honestly believe, and this is the hopeful Temple, I really believe people are starting to come around. I really think just the way that we have turned and become so metabolically unhealthy, I think people are just using common sense and naturally starting to question the nutrition dogma that they've been fed for, 10, 15, 20 years. There's something to be said when you do something and you're doing the right things, but there's no results being produced, or you still feel the same way. And so, I've really been pleasantly surprised at the doctors, the cardiologists, the other dietitians, the other, coworkers, all of that have really been open-minded and have received this message really well, which is super encouraging for the future, I think.
Are you in Phoenix, Scottsdale area?
I'm in Gilbert, Phoenix.
Gilbert. Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. That's where is that where the university is?
Yep. Yeah. So, the Sonoran Health Sciences. So I'm going back to school to become a naturopathic doctor. That is in Tempe. Yeah. It's in Tempe, right off Broadway exit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's Phoenix and Scottsdale. And then there's exit. And you're in two different towns, but you're really in Phoenix and Scottsdale.
Exactly.
Well, I asked that because a couple of my favorite guests have been from that area. One is Dr. Jack Wolfson. He's a cardiologist who's married to a chiropractor, and she's the one that opened his eyes, and he left a traditional Western practice of put them on statins, low-fat dieting. And she was the one because, I figure you like the way a chiropractor or a naturopath or non-traditional practitioner would practice. And it totally changed his point of view. They moved from where they were living so they could go someplace to get more vitamin D. All the things that you and I talk about, he now implements in his life. And if anyone wants to follow him, Dr. Jack Wolfson, I think they're the Doctors Wolfson might be their social media handle because she's a chiropractor. But I didn't know if and I say that because he's in your community. He's left Western medicine behind, and of course we can all say if you broke your arm, yes, you go to the hospital or the doctor and you have a splint and you take the antibiotic if it's infected. We're not saying that, but we're saying there are a whole lot of other paths to get you to wellness. And a lot of times it's within your own body's healing. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, 110%. I think one thing people really need to understand is conventional medicine is phenomenal for immediate emergencies. There's no one better to go to than the ER if you're having something life-threatening. However, conventional medicine has failed when it comes to the management of chronic disease, autoimmune disease, metabolic problems, all of that. And so people really are flocking to natural tendencies in holistic medicine and natural healing and whole body healing to really overcome these things, like I mentioned. And so 100%, I think it's really fascinating. And you're seeing a lot of doctors from conventional medicine move to more holistic practice, which I really love.
Yeah. What are some of the things you want to focus on, you think, when you're a naturopath?
Oh, 100%.
That you can't do now?
Oh, yeah, totally. So I definitely want to stay in my metabolic disease, chronic disease, autoimmunity, and weight loss. I think it really can impact the quality of people's lives dramatically when they feel good coming from that state. And so that I plan to keep my niche very similar. I do have quite a bit of interest in autoimmunity as well, which is, 80% of autoimmune disease happens in women. And so I really think that's going to be a bigger area to focus on as well.
Well, tell me your journey. Who lifted the blinders? What was the first thing you did? And tell me the freedoms you've had from your medical conditions.
Yeah, so I started noticing something was a little off with my body. I played college soccer, and it was my junior year. I'm fit as a whistle, like running, lifting weights. I should not be having any physical signs of breakdown. And I started really experiencing, a little bit of anxiety, depression. I was getting cystic acne. I was gaining weight. And you think, how is that even possible? I'm a soccer player running 90 minutes a day. And so I started thinking something was wrong at that point. And I got real interested in nutrition, obviously in college, and I went on to do my residency. And that's when for a dietitian, that's when I got diagnosed with PCOS and Hashimoto's. And, I was at rock bottom at that point. I had gained so much weight. I was just newly married, but sleeping all day because my thyroid was so dysfunctional. And I can remember specifically going in to an OB-GYN and saying, hey, I haven't had my period in like 6 months. I wanted to be a mom. I was newly married. And so, of course, they test me for PCOS, which I came back positive. And I never forget it. I was sitting in a chair and the doctor came to me and said, here's your options. We're going to put you on metformin, and I want you to come back when you're ready to get pregnant. We'll do fertility treatments. And I remember thinking, what? Like, I'm a dietitian. Like, there's anything I can do to help get rid of this problem that I'm experiencing. Nope, there's nothing you can do to change it. Weight loss may help a little bit, but you're still going to struggle with infertility for the rest of your life. And I remember thinking, no, this is not the whole story. And that's really what ultimately opened my eyes. And that's how I got involved in the low carb ketogenic metabolic health space. And really what kind of the icing on the cake was for me was I was working in the hospital at the time. I read the book, Why We Get Sick by Dr. Benjamin Bickman.
Changed my life. It totally changed my life.
I know. I say it on almost every podcast because he is incredible. And at that moment, I decided, I was like, you know what? I'm in control of this. I can take back my health. And that's really when the timeline shifted for me and I started losing weight. I got my period back. And then I really also started changing the way that I was practicing with patients. I was working with diabetics and working with people that were struggling, and I was giving them the same, eat all these carbs, eat all these things. And it was just ruining it. And so then I started to see the changes in my patients. And that's when I said the light turned on and I never looked back. And shortly after that was when I quit my hospital job and branched out on my own. So it really was quite a journey from sickness to health. And then also realizing people deserve so much more than what they're getting. And they can find healing within themselves for sure.
How much weight did you lose after that initial PCOS weight gain?
I lost about 60 pounds.
That's a lot of weight.
That was a lot of weight. Yeah, it was a lot. You could see it everywhere, and you could see it in my face. And even more so, aside from the weight loss too, I just saw changes in my skin. I saw changes in my hair. I saw changes in my mood, my libido, everything. It was like this just huge weight, literal and physical weight came off of me, as well as just this burden on my health that I just hated.
Well, you know what you're very fortunate about, and that is no one put you on birth control pills.
I know.
Because that's a thing I have to fight with these young girls and their moms who say, well, she's either had acne, and, I start wondering, well, what's wrong? What's the root cause? And they all say, well, they put her on birth control pills. And I die just a slow death.
I know, I hear it. And, I did the birth control route when I was in college, and I'm constantly dealing with this with women and even women that are in their 60s, and they tell me they've been on birth control for the last 25 years. And I'm like, what is happening to, we have no idea because it's just a big old Band-Aid and we don't even have a clue what's going on with your hormones. And so, yeah, nobody's warned about birth control and what it can do, the carcinogenic effect. It's a hot mess when it comes to birth control.
A lot of people I follow, because I'm more in the carnivore space just because mitigating my autoimmune conditions, trying to repigment my vitiligo and some other things. I'm kind of in a little bit of a flare up right now. And I can't figure out why, but I'll get to the bottom of it. But one of the people I follow in the carnivore space said recently, I think he's Carnivore Aurelius, Marcus Aurelius. Yeah. Carnivore Aurelius. He and several others talk about what it does in choosing a mate.
It's wild,
because the
right?
way it suppresses their hormones, because we know we're hormonally wired. I mean, Dr. Fung says we're hormonally wired to eat and to stop eating, but we're also hormonally wired with pheromones to pick a mate. There's so many benefits to our hormones in regulating them, and how you can choose the wrong mate. You might, one of them said you might choose a soy boy, which is somebody in our community who is a vegan, but there are so many detriments long-term to these young girls being put on birth control pills because it's the panacea for you have pimples. It's the panacea for you don't have a period. Yeah. So that really worries me for a young generation and their future, and to their ability to get pregnant. I want these girls at the proper time. And I'm not talking about someone who is preventing pregnancy because they're preventing pregnancy. I'm talking about at this point, because that's your personal choice with your body. I'm just saying, really look into it. But also for the person who the doctor or provider says, well, here, just take these pills.
I think the birth control stuff with the mate is super interesting. I would really be curious.
Have you seen some of that?
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's documented research, and I wonder, I'd love to see more in terms of like what they're looking at with, divorce rates and what the status levels of happiness between partners are when someone comes off. It's very, very interesting. And I do think you're right. And I love that you mentioned that we're hormonally wired, because it's so true. Yes. They dictate nearly every single thing that we do, even down to decision making. And when you put a child on that's in the middle of probably one of the most key times of development in their life, figuring out who they are, what they like, all of that, no telling what it messes up. And what's even more unfortunate is that there are better options, and that, I didn't learn about natural family planning until after I was married and ready to have a kid. And I'm thinking, why did I not know anything about my own cycle when I had a period for 15 years, And it's like, we need to teach these young girls, like, this is what to expect in your luteal phase, your follicular phase. All of this stuff is so important to learn, but it's just not taught. And I think if more women were taught that, there would be different decisions when it came to pregnancy prevention and all of that.
Well, they are the people who hand out the drugs are assuming that we're stupid.
Yeah.
Because we're a whole lot smarter if you give me the science and I'll figure it out. But if you give these young girls even to understand their bodies, then they'll realize the times of fertility. That's when their desire changes. That's when their hunger changes. I mean, all the things that they'll say to their moms and these young girls, and then even college girls who are on their own, because I see a few of them, and them understanding that it's all normal. Because they'll say, I'm just really hungry in my cycle. Well,
you should.
Because you're supposed to be. That's your progesterone, all the things. So I think that's a real fascinating fact about our bodies and just how hormonal we are. One thing you mentioned, I was adopted by my cousins when I was 12, and he was an attorney, a well-respected attorney, and my mother worked for him in the law firm. And I remember, so they would see attorneys, especially in small towns, see a lot of divorces. They do a lot of, he did everything, right? He was like the general practitioner of attorneys. But even though he did civil and criminal legal defense, but he would say the women who came in wanting a divorce, they would always kind of say, so have you had a hysterectomy?
Very interesting.
And my dad said, anytime they had hysterectomy, same thing. They had no desire for him. Their him that they have, they might hate their family, during your cycle. Since I'm postmenopausal, I can now look in the rearview mirror. There was a week out of the month where I hated anybody that lived in my home or was from my womb. I mean, anybody, but went away, and it's just going through those waves. And of course you're going to, fall off your surfboard a few times because you don't feel great, but then you get back on. But I always thought that was so interesting. So I just say that again, one thing I can tell you is no judgment for me. If that's what someone's decided to do, just here's what I want people to do. Explore all your options. Are you informed? Like women will tell me all the time, Temple, because this is where I am in my season. Well, Lisa, I'm not going to do I'm not going to do hormone replacement therapy. And then they'll have some story about, well, my grandmother had breast cancer. And I go, well, the science, and we realized in 2002 that all that science was erroneous. It has been debunked. And then I say, well, it's cardioprotective to have bioidentical estrogen. And it's really dementia protective too. Then they'll go, well, no one's told me. So that's why I just know anybody listening, whatever decision, wherever you are in whatever your fork in the road is, please get informed. Follow Temple, follow the people we're talking about. Dr. Bickman's book completely changed. I'd gotten my certification from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, New York. The end of September, I read his book. The first week in October, I'd heard him on a podcast. And he's just so endearing and just likable and a great communicator. That really changed my trajectory in advice I would give. But somebody complained recently, and I don't look at my reviews, but sometimes they're sent to my email. I don't know why. I guess maybe that platform sends them. And the person said, she's raw and tells whatever her stories, whatever. But she says, my gosh, she talks about Dr. Bickman, Dr. Fung, and Jen Stevens every time. And I tell you, part of that is, it's because I want y'all to know, it's called attribution. I'm a journalist, and journalists should always give their attribution to who they learned it from. Every time it needs to be said in every podcast that Dr. Ben Bickman wrote the book, Why We Get Sick. Dr. Fung is the medical father of intermittent fasting, is what I call him. And Jen Stevens, who's become a friend of mine, is kind of the lay person, lay authority on intermittent fasting. So anything I spout out, I try to tell, well, I learned that from so-and-so. And I can see you do that too. Because didn't what Dr. Bickman say, when you find out that PCOS has a root in insulin resistance, that kidney stones or whatever, there were some random things that I went, oh, that's from too much dementia. We know cognitive decline, obviously, cancer. Didn't it blow your mind, all the things that you read that were related to the fact that what was on your fork putting to your mouth?
I mean, it was like you, I say the same thing, is that book really did change my life. And one thing I love about Dr. Bickman, and I've had the privilege of getting to work with him on writing some of his blogs for Health Code and stuff.
Okay,
so
jealous.
I want to give him a shout out. Yeah, he's very, he's just as nice as you would expect him to be.
I know
in public and private. And one thing I love about him too is he's very genuine about the science. And I've even heard him say on a podcast, if something comes out that proves this theory wrong, I would love it, because that would be like able to help people better, which is why I appreciate what he does so much. But it was, when I was reading through the book, I'm like, I have an idea that PCOS is caused by that. Prediabetes, diabetes, all of these types of things. It makes sense that they're metabolic diseases. But now that we're coming up and talking about, Alzheimer's being diabetes type 3 and all of these things, it makes sense, because that's what the medical community has been telling us is just such a mystery. All this is just a mystery. Why is everyone dying of cardiovascular disease? Oh, it's a mystery. It's not so much a mystery when you start looking at what really causes it. And so ultimately, I think the more we talk about it, the better people are going to be able to open their eyes and change and get some help at least.
I think too, and there was a generation of medical providers who were taught and who have told us that you can't reverse type 2 diabetes. Oh, yes, you can. That you can't reverse Hashimoto's. Oh, yes, you can. Or PCOS. There are so many death sentences that I just say women, because women are affected more by the conditions I'm mentioning.
Yes.
And it's such a dead end for women, and it's so discouraging.
Mhm.
Nobody told me they told me when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, I would take the medicine for the rest of my life. Well, right now I'm working on getting off it. Have you
Yeah.
done that? Have you?
Yeah. I am. I'm off. So I just got off most of my thyroid medications.
Wow.
One medication I do continue that I do talk about that I think is a phenomenal medication is called low-dose naltrexone. I think anybody
It's
with
changing my life right now.
anyone with autoimmune conditions, it's more of a naturopathic medicine move. A functional doctor are the ones that typically will prescribe this. It's a very good medication. And so, yes, I think you're absolutely right. And one thing I do want to just say too is I think it's really important for people to not expect their doctors to have all the answers, but
Right.
also do their own research. And,
Right.
that has changed my life. And I encourage everyone, someone gives you one of these quote unquote death sentences, or you'll be on this medication the rest of your life, do your research. It's almost 9 times out of 10 not true, in a sense that there are either lifestyle alterations you can make, diet alterations you can make, hot and cold therapies. We could go on for days about all the biohacking and things you can add into it. And so I would encourage anyone that may be feeling discouraged or are in the pits because they have something medically that's burdening them, is that there's always a step forward, and really just figuring out what works for you, doing your own research. And, I think if we took it all the way back up to the top, it's really the whole medical system that disables doctors. They spend 10 minutes with us, less than most of the time. They don't, I think, which is also what I want to say too, is I think this is slowly switching. I think people are, I think we'll get to the other end of this, I hope, and really, start from the top of the whole medical system and hopefully get, they say doctors are typically about 20 years behind, or medicine. I shouldn't say doctors. Medicine is about 20 years behind research. And so you got to be your own advocate. You got to nowadays, because the system just can't support it.
The other thing I'm learning, and because of this autoimmune flare of mine, and I'm thinking, my adrenals kind of aren't doing right. I have a little patch of alopecia that's popped up. So I'm trying to get to the root cause. And one thing, I have it right here, it's the liver, right? Yeah. I'm seeing so much about the liver. And this is for those of you who watch on YouTube, and I'll tell you what this is. It's organic castor oil that I'm using, the Queen of Thrones castor oil packs, which will leak on your sheets if you use them, if you use it too much. I didn't realize it. Yeah. So I threw it out, and I'm now I'm rubbing it using an old t-shirt and using a heating pad at night. But let's talk about what you're feeling on castor oil and the magic of the liver, gallbladder, and adrenals.
Yeah, so I think the liver is, this is a weird thing to say, but it's probably my favorite organ. Being in school, looking at it.
You're my favorite.
Learning all the liver is like, we know it. You can't survive without a working, functional liver. Yeah. And so it really is crucial. One, we abuse our liver. We, take in tons of NSAIDs, drinking too much. We really do treat our liver terrible. And environmentally, it's not treated well either, in terms of all the stuff we're slathering on our skin and breathing. And unfortunately, a lot of that's hard to switch over, but you do the best you can, but I will say I'm a big fan of castor oil packs. I love Queen of Thrones. I have the same tie around your waist wrap as well. So I think just understanding a lot of the things on drainage supported, lymphatic support, all of those things are really important, which I love that, like sauna therapy has gotten a lot of recent news.
I did that this morning.
And so I think the more people learn about these modalities and learn that a lot of them can be done from home, like the castor oil pack, anyone can do a castor oil pack. You don't have to go to your doctor to do that. You should be careful with it, but it's so empowering. People, you really can, when you start learning about this stuff, you really can start putting it into action. And I love that you're, being open and transparent about what you're going through with your flare up. It's a part of everyone's health journey. Anyone with autoimmune conditions knows this. It's a series of ups and downs, and you control it the best you can, but sometimes things are unavoidable. And so, the liver is important to support. It's important to love on your liver. Certain foods can help with that. The way you sleep obviously is very regenerative.
What foods do you like then for a good detox of the liver?
Yeah, so I'm all about bitters. I'm all about, of course, being really cautious about what you're purchasing if it's not organic, in terms of anything that your liver is going to have to take care of, pesticides, herbicides, those types of things. But really, your meat, your vegetables. I love bitters. I love NAC, which is a supportive supplement of the liver. I love milk thistle. All in context of the individual situation, and then of course avoiding things that we know don't treat your liver well, like NSAIDs and alcohol, or recreational drugs. Abusing certain things can also be really tough on the liver. But that's kind of where I start.
Well, so I started the low dose naltrexone because I had this adorable Danny Williamson, is her name. Oh, I just loved her. She was a redhead too, and just sassy, and I loved everything about her. And she said when she died, they were going to have to pull her LDN and her bioidentical hormone therapy out of her cold hand.
I agree.
Whatever they say. So, and I tried LDN a few years ago, but I was doing it to mitigate my antibody count on my Hashimoto's.
Yeah.
And it didn't at first, but so I've mitigated it. So my antibody count is down. That's why I'm kind of mad at my body right now, why I'm seeing this alopecia
What's going on?
patch. Cause I'm like, I'm doing right. What are y'all doing down there? What's the rest of you doing? So I did then at that time I think they start you 1.5 maybe is the dose, and then bump you to 3, and then 4.5. Because I want to explain this to our listeners. In high doses, it's used for addicts and alcoholics, and I think it gives them maybe an aversion. They won't.
Yeah. It essentially blocks the receptors. So,
I think it's doing that to me. In a low dose, I'm going to Napa next week.
Yeah.
And my husband said, were you going to drink there? And I went, no, it kind of grosses me out.
It does. Yeah.
And I think the LDN has done something. Like, I'm not patting myself on the back like I'm some righteous warrior who's never going to drink again. I have truly lost the taste for it. Yeah. I think it's the LDN.
It's 100%. And the thing about LDN that's so funny, I was introduced to it because a naturopath said the same thing to me. They're like, I'll take LDN the rest of my life. And I was like, that's interesting. You're pretty young. And then I started learning about the medication, and it's really fascinating. There needs to be a lot more research done on it, but it can even help people that are struggling with miscarriages. There's a lot of very interesting usage for LDN.
Really?
It's very, now I'm saying when they're pregnant. One thing that's to know about LDN is you don't necessarily go for like, max dose is going to give me more benefits. Some people actually do better on like a 1.5 or 2. It's all about figuring out which may have been the case for you in the very beginning when you first tried it. It may have just been a dosing issue. But so it's a very cool medication. The trick is getting it compounded correctly. Like, you can't just get the large amount of it and break it up yourself. It doesn't work like that. So it's a very interesting medication, but can help tremendously for all autoimmune, not just Hashimoto's. It can help with ulcerative colitis. It can help with anything that's autoimmune dysregulating.
And so, did you start at 1.5 and are you at 4?
Yes. So now? I started at 1.5 as well. This was probably 5 years ago. I started at 1.5, and I've shifted my dose when I got some issues with other autoimmune. Ulcerative colitis is an issue that I'm battling. I got boosted up. And so right now I'm right at 4.0. And that seems to be my happy place. Anymore, I start feeling a little funky. But I do like the 4.0. And if I need to try going up a little bit, I will for sure.
I will say I do have a tinge of nausea some days, but it goes away because I'm an intermittent faster. I'm not eating in the morning or anything.
Yes.
So
I found that was my experience with it for the first 6 months as well. And then now I don't have any issue with it at all. So it may just be, you may just need to wait it out a little bit.
Have you reversed your UC, your ulcerative colitis?
Oh, that's a whole nother ballgame. Yeah. So I'll tell you, I think, talking about trauma and stress. So what happened to me 2 years ago? So I had that I have a 4-year-old that's adopted and I have a 2-year-old. We all know that giving birth can be a very, it's extremely stressful on a woman's body. And it's oftentimes when autoimmune conditions will show their ugly head.
I got one with each child, and then I got 3 others just for fun. One with each child.
I know, right? We're so blessed, right? So I had my daughter, she's 2-year-old now, and she had a life-threatening congenital defect 4 days after birth. And so we had to rush her to the ER. She stopped breathing at home. Let's just say I was under tremendous amounts of stress. I wasn't eating. I was at the NICU 24/7, not sleeping, stressing out. And so that is when my ulcerative colitis cropped up. No doubt it was 100% related to trauma and stress. And so to answer your question, my UC is under control. Praise the Lord. It was a long journey. It was not under control for about a year. And it was probably the hardest health year I've ever had in terms of just frustration. I was doing everything natural that I could think of that could potentially help. But ultimately it came down to stress for me. So really controlling stress, making sure I'm sleeping and staying on top of the modalities that I use to keep it under control, which is cold therapy. I use the sauna. I use LDN, obviously, which was what I'm talking about. And very relatively strict dieting methods for me is what helps keep UC under control and allows me to have a good quality of life with it.
Now, how is it different from Crohn's?
UC just affects the left lower side of the colon, whereas Crohn's can affect your entire digestive system. And so, on a scale of like, which is worse, Crohn's typically tends to be harder to treat because it can be all over, whereas ulcerative colitis is I wouldn't say milder because that's not a good description.
It's a serious condition.
Yeah, it's very brutal, but it typically affects that lower descending colon, sigmoid colon area.
So how many colonoscopies have you had in your life?
One. Now really? I battled, just one. Now, mind you, I've only had this going on for about a year and a half. So they do recommend that you get a colonoscopy yearly, especially now with people are getting colon cancer at so young.
Is that right?
It's very, you look at the statistical numbers of it.
Let's talk about the liver in that. I wonder what the detox system is doing. Remember, we're looking upstream and then the colon may be catching what the liver couldn't do.
Yeah, 100%. And you think about what the liver does in terms of like the gallbladder, all of that in terms of digestive secretions and the things that you need to properly digest food. People are on chronic PPIs nowadays, even at 20 years old. And so I think it's a combination of everything. I think it's a combination of inflammation, which we know feeds most cancers. We also know that the diet and the stuff the trash that we're eating, we know that the pesticides, the herbicides, all that kind of stuff that we're consuming. We also know the products that contain all these estrogens and all these. I think it's a huge. I think it's a grouping of things to say that, but it's very interesting about the colon cancer because it's affect they didn't used to recommend colonoscopies till I think 40, 55 years old.
It was 50. My husband's in that field. I think it was 50 for a long time. What is it now? 40?
Oh, 45? I mean, it's younger. And I've even heard some debate about like, if you're at risk, like you've had IBS or you have digestive issues or like me, where you have a quote unquote diagnosed IBD condition. I mean, I'm supposed to get them yearly. And so, it's quite concerning, to say the least.
Well, one of the magical things that I think you do too, that Bickman, all these people talk about because of reaching autophagy, the cellular clean out where your body, it eliminates these junky proteins and you eliminate them, is intermittent fasting. Do you incorporate intermittent fasting into your daily life?
Yes, 100%. And I'll throw out another name. I love Cynthia Thurlow. If you're not familiar with her,
she
is the best. And yes, I do intermittent fasting. I prolong fast. Prolonged fasting can be a game changer.
What's your longest?
My longest is 5 days water fasted.
I did that last summer. It wasn't fun.
No, it was everyone who asked me about that. I'm like, look, I'm going to be honest. It was brutal. People all say, I feel euphoric. No, I felt terrible.
Wait, my husband kept sending me YouTube links of people that on day 3 felt great. Day 4. I
kept waiting.
Me too.
Yeah, it was brutal. And I look back knowing what I know now hormonally, I don't think women's hormones in regards to cortisol are meant for that. Like my husband was doing it with me and he was like chipper, happy, like felt good, could go work out. I was in the pit. Like I was having to sleep all the time. I say all that. I felt afterwards, I definitely felt fantastic. Me too, regenerated. Right. My skin was like beautiful.
Yes.
All the things. But during the actual the prolonged fast, I was not a nice mommy or wifey.
In fact, I may have had my pellet therapy during that week on I think on day 3 or 4. So I asked my provider to do some lab work to look at my,
Yeah.
I knew my fasting insulin usually stays about 2.2, but during that
Sure.
it got to 1.1.
I'm
But
sure.
my glucose was 52. That's why I didn't feel well.
Yeah.
That's why I kept saying, I don't have the energy. I'll do this. I was doing it because of a questionable, it was a benign growth in my colon. It was fine.
Oh,
It was not
goodness.
cancerous,
Yeah.
but I did it in case it was cancerous to kick the cells to the
Get rid
core.
of it. Yeah.
And I remember thinking then afterwards, because in one trick, my friend Laurie Lewis, who's a longtime intermittent faster, said, open your window gently, watermelon, maybe if you can handle dairy, do yogurt, blueberries. She said all these things because you could get sick. I didn't do any of that. After I did it, after I finished Temple, I was glad. I patted myself on the back, and my friend Laurie said, now we really, because we're over 50, you need to do that every year. No,
I know. I was like, don't say that, please.
I'll do maybe 3 days this summer.
Well, they say 72 hours for autoimmune conditions is really like a full immune system reset. So the next time I do it, I'll probably aim for 72 hours. That's at least studied. So you get all the benefits of, I mean, of course, if you go 5 days, you're going to get more. But if you're looking to reset the whole immune system, autophagy, I don't know the verb for that, but get rid of all those denatured cells and everything, then 72 hours seems to be kind of the magic number. And I love that you brought up the low blood glucose. A lot of people don't realize that that's really stressful on the body. It's, and it causes those elevated cortisol. And, a lot of people are always, it's high carb that causes it. Sometimes it's that reactive hypoglycemia that's causing some problems too. So I love that you brought that up, because that was probably what was driving my cortisol so high as well. I didn't test. I should have, but
it's interesting. Yeah. In fact, Ben Azadi, he's the keto camp guy.
I love Ben. Yeah, he's great.
He said, we talked about it. He said he also on day 4 did labs, and he was at 52 on glucose, and he didn't want to do cartwheels either. And so I think it's normal. And that is low, guys.
It's low. Even for a keto low carber, I really don't like seeing like keto low carb men or women dropping below 60, 65. That's where I start to kind of raise some flags. And I think it could sometimes do a little bit more good than bad if you're wearing a CGM or whatever. But that's kind of my cutoff.
Are you wearing a CGM?
Not at the moment, but I love them. And I wear them quite often. I love. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think they're really helpful in terms of like figuring out what foods really spike, or really they call me out. It gives me accountability when I'm not sleeping well or stressed, So I'm a big fan of CGMs.
Well, I've done it twice. One I did maybe a year ago, and I was an intermittent faster and probably had 4-hour windows. But after I opened my window, I've always opened my window with fat and protein because of what carbs, they made me feel nauseated.
Yes.
Because of the blood sugar up and down. I didn't feel good afterwards. So, but during that, I remember I ate some ice cream or I had dessert, and so it would spike. Well, this last time I did it, I had adopted a carnivore meat-based diet last summer.
Yeah.
It's boring when you have a CGM because it doesn't go up, it doesn't go down.
Yeah.
It's pretty, not flatline, but I'm saying there's not a lot of excitement with the CGM.
No.
If you've ever looked at one on somebody who was more meat based and a keto person, someone who's really strict keto may not see much spikes or much dips.
Yeah. The most I saw, and the reason I said it held me accountable, is I would see the biggest spikes and the biggest dips when I was stressed out. People were stressing me out or I wasn't sleeping. And so it really helped me in terms of like, oh, wow, I really have to prioritize sleep hygiene. I really have to prioritize stress management, because really that's doing the most damage to me. My diet was good. And like you said, I eat a more meat-based ketogenic diet. And so it was staying pretty flatline, but I was seeing some spikes when I wasn't sleeping, I also have a baby, so that doesn't help.
That's right. What I saw during the middle of the night, and I think this is normal really, and you can address it. I would almost dip in the middle of the night below 50. I think I was reading though, and it said, because the glucose goddess says in her book, for every spike and dip you have, you're one step closer to a heart attack. And that, I don't know if that's an overstatement or how she's saying it, But I guess she's saying for traditional people who eat a traditional standard American diet, probably.
100%.
And I don't. So do you think there's any harm to those of us who eat a meat-based diet or I'm pretty ketovorish, in the middle of the night, if you see it dip below 60 or 55, does that worry you?
No, that doesn't worry me. Neither does a little bit of an elevated upper, spike in the morning. That's a dawn phenomenon there. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of good research on this. Is pretty common in the keto carnivore community. But if you compare the blood glucose levels to the insulin levels, you're seeing a little bit of a shift with the blood glucose dipping and then going a little bit higher. You're not seeing movement in insulin. And so that's more important to me than this shift.
That's true.
You know, and so that's really what I think about it. I don't worry with it too much. And obviously, of course, it depends on how much we're talking that morning spike being. But I don't think there's any danger in having a little bit of a low at night. And then I think it's just, I think it's secondary hormones causing that. That's completely normal.
How are you raising your kids? Do they even get apple juice on a good day? Or all the things that I fed my kids, because I was told it's healthy to give them apple juice and a bowl of cereal, which I would never give anyone. I love those things. So how do you handle it with kids?
I love this question. I get this a lot. A lot of people assume my kids are like strict diet. So I walk a very fine line of I want my kids to understand what foods make them feel good. I also don't want to create any type of disordered, at that age, it's impossible to understand. Like we can understand what's good and what's bad. And so they eat meat. Meat is primary it. Like I will serve that before anything and everything at every meal. Protein is king with my children when they're building so much and growing so much. Second is a little bit of vegetables. And third, I do fruit as well. And so I do not keep your ultra processed anything in our house, but I pulled the reins back a little bit when it comes to like if they're out on a birthday party or things like that. What I'll do is I just make them really full on protein before we go, and I'll put a piece of cake in front of them, and they may take one bite and they'll be done because they've had that protein, and it's very sweet to my kids. So I have noticed that my kids cannot put down as much sweets as others because I think it's just too much. And I've even had my 4-year-old tell me, Mommy, my tummy hurts. I ate too much. My tummy hurts. And so I'm trying to foster that environment where they're learning it on their own, but I'm also not demonizing the food until they can understand it,
Well, didn't you as an adult who faced this diet, that's what I'm saying. It was, a self-correcting error, as we call it.
100%.
I never opened the first time. So I've been fasting since 2017, and I was in morning radio, and everyone would bring donuts or biscuits or whatever to if we interviewed them or they were on our morning radio show. And that first time, I took the donut or the cupcake home and I opened my window with it, and I felt nausea. I probably reactive hypoglycemia.
100%.
I felt nausea. I was shaky. I was sweating. I couldn't think clearly. I kind of went, well, I'll knock that off my list. I will never do that again.
Yep.
So I guess that's what you're trying to give your kids, put them in the driver's seat for them to make the decision that I don't feel great now when I eat the donut in the morning, unless I had bacon and eggs first.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's how I learned too. And I cannot tell you how many of my clients tell me the same thing. They're like, I've joined your program. I've been eating keto, lots of protein, lots of this. I had a little bit of a defect this weekend, had a little bit too much, and I feel awful. I can't believe I was living in the way that I feel right now all the time. And so, yes, I love that you point that out, because it's like, once you know what good feels like, anytime you feel bad, you're like, I'm not going back there. I don't want to go back there, because I just operate so much better at the level that I'm at now. And I see it with my kids. I also see it with myself and my husband as well.
Well, people rely on you. Your family does, your kids do, your clients do, your husband does. You don't have time for a down day.
Nope. No, I don't.
To have a UC, an attack. Any type of IBD flare up. So if you look at it that way, you think, I really want to be a good steward of my body for not only to glorify the Lord, but 100%. So that I get my stuff done. God created us with this energy and to impart wisdom in people, not for our glory, but for God's glory, but
100%.
To be upright and be productive in the things that are really important to us. Okay, let's talk about the thing that we've got to seriously petition Congress about, and it's removing seed oils from
Oh, I know. It's
restaurants, grocery stores. The American Heart Association heart is on canola oil. I mean,
I know. It's shocking.
Well, bought and paid for everything. I mean,
Yeah.
follow the
Follow
money.
the money.
Have you, and Ben Azadi even talks about that. Dr. Kate Shanahan is her name, or Kate Shanahan, something.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that right, but is smoking worse, sitting in a chair worse, or seed oils? She went, oh, seed oils. I mean, and they're saying that they're in our system for 2 years.
It's crazy.
Are you noticing that when you remove them, because I try to remove them from everything, that you feel better?
Oh, without question. And this became so obvious to me, more so when I had UC, and that was about 2 years ago. So that was like kind of seed oil time, but it's really gotten bigger and bigger. But yes, immediately I know if I've consumed seed oils, both my hands will swell up. I'll wake up in the morning and my hands will be swollen and my joints will hurt. And I know it's seed oils. And you're absolutely right. And I think the more we get this out there, the more people are able to change, but they're cheap. So most restaurants are going to use them. They're oftentimes used for frying and refrying, which makes it even worse and worse and worse. And so, I noticed immediately, and I noticed it with my clients too. I had a client that had, her face was 95% covered with rosacea, and it was thick. I mean, it was a horrifically thick rosacea. And she came to me at the point of tears. She wouldn't take pictures. She was a professor, one of my, not favorite clients, but one of my most shocking clients. And she removed seed oils and dairy and gluten and a couple other things, but she can tell that her face completely cleared up, and so your skin will always show you what your insides are doing. And so, I think that was a little bit of a sidetrack, but you're absolutely correct. It's something we need. Sugar and seed oils. If people just even focus on those two things and weren't even changing the carbs and stuff, you'll see a remarkable change in your health.
It does reduce your choices. I mean, you just have 100%. To understand that. And eating out is more difficult. I look like the high maintenance customer, always diner, when I say, no, you can't cook it in seed oil. I know. You have to use butter or olive oil. And then my daughter told me that some restaurants now say olive oil, but it's really a mix.
Yes. Yeah, it's not greenwashing, whatever they call it. I don't know. It's
that is kind of a greenwashing.
It is. Yeah. And you'll look at mayonnaise that'll say olive oil mayonnaise. You flip it over. Yeah, it's got olive oil last ingredient, canola oil is the second. And it's like, my goodness, that's the kind of stuff that needs to be outlawed and petitioned in Congress, because that is so manipulative and people think they're doing themselves a favor. But I'm like you, and I'll even tell my waiter, I'll tip you better if you help me out here, because I don't want to consume it. And you would be surprised what all they put it on. They put it on everything.
Are you making your own mayonnaise yet?
No, I wish I had the time. I like Primal Kitchen.
I don't like it.
I know a lot of people don't. It's acquired taste, I'd say. I also like Chosen Foods. I think they have a really good mayonnaise. Chosen Foods. Yeah, they have a good one, and it tastes like regular mayonnaise, in my opinion. Yeah, one day I'll make. My neighbor used to make her own mayonnaise, and I was like, "Girl, you are it. I love it." But
my friend who's a chef, who's one of my clients, he's lost 100 pounds. I mean, he's a chef. He's like, Lisa, it's 3 ingredients.
Yeah,
it's
eggs,
oil, and maybe salt or something, or lemon juice. I can't remember.
Lemon juice. I think.
Is it? Yeah, an acid maybe in there?
Something. I think it's an acid.
But he said it's so easy. And I said, I know, I just haven't done it. And it's because we're in the South, so I'm in the deep South, where mayonnaise is king here.
It is, with every meal in different variations.
Yeah. And so, that's why, I mean, then I swear I'm not as high maintenance as I sound. But that's why when I go to restaurants, I don't even order salads, because I'm not going to eat their dressing. No. But if they can bring olive oil and vinegar to the table, then I'll eat it, because they'll go, girl, it's ranch. And I go, I know, but your ranch has a bunch of artificial things in it. And there's seed oils and even the salt and pepper. There's a brand called Kinder, Kinder, and we've seen it at Costco and at Walmart.
Yep.
Sunflower oil's in it. It's salt and pepper. And they use.
How do you make that happen? I don't even know. I don't even know why. I know it's a food processing thing. Like, I don't know if it keeps it from sticking. I don't know what, but I'm like, how did y'all even figure out how to do that? I don't know.
So cost. I mean, there are all these things. I just found out from one of my guests, and she's like the keto carnivore, Devin Willett.
Okay.
She need to follow her. She's a dog.
Yeah.
She's lost, I think, 90 pounds,
Wow.
reversed her interstitial cystitis
Wow.
through health.
Yeah.
She said that Buffalo Wild Wings fries in either lard.
Yeah. They do.
I think it's lard.
It's lard, but you do have to be careful about I figured this out from, I don't know if you know Laura Spath. She's a carnivore person. She's a friend of mine. Yeah, she's here in Phoenix as well.
Okay, get her on my podcast. I mean, I try to get in touch with her. Darren's listening right now. Darren, because it looks like, yes, I talked to Devin about her. It looks like her Instagram name is Laura's Path.
Or Spath is her last name. Yeah,
I know, but it's Laura Spath. But I was like, oh, that's Laura's Path. That's so cute. And she was like, no, I saw her once go, no, I'm Laura Spath. I went,
that's funny.
Okay, what did she say?
No, she told me about that, about Buffalo Wild Wings is good, but you do have to check on the location because I have looked around and it kind of depends on the state too.
Womp, womp, womp.
I know, but check. Most of them do. You just want to make sure because, eating chicken wings, that's a pretty high, that could be a high source of oil if you're not careful. But yeah, you're right. They do. Most of the time.
Well, in fact, Devin Willett is the one I tried to make. I've never been to Buffalo Wild Wing. I mean, I think I went with a son in high school and I probably ate a salad. Yeah. Like that is too messy and old to me. But what Devin said to me one time that really resonated with me was carnivores often get palate fatigue. Eating, chewing steak every day. And she said that's why she switched and started doing the chicken wings, the boneless wings, and they're drummies and pieces. And so I make my own because I have a convection oven that can circulate the air.
Make them crispy.
And I do have pork lard. My mouth's watering because I haven't opened my feasting window yet. Sorry. So I had to swallow. But I couldn't get them crispy enough. I've even done the baking powder, the non-aluminum baking. I mean, it's all these different things. So I told my husband, I go, we're going to Buffalo Wild Wings.
Try it.
Honey, did somebody kidnap you? Like, why are you saying this? I said, I think they fry in pork lard.
They do. Yeah, they definitely do. So, and it does. I love that she says that palate fatigue because that's one of the questions I get a lot is like, oh, I'm kind of bored. I feel like I'm eating the same thing. But you just got to look for ideas. It's very helpful to follow different people, see what they're doing, look for recipes online. When I did a short stint of carnivore and I really found it was helpful to do chicken and I lived in Florida at the time, so I could get fresh seafood. I did a ton of seafood, and so that really helped change it up.
Yes. So what I'm going to open my window. I have a sous vide and I cooked beef tenderloin. I have some boiled shrimp that I just picked up from the grocery store that they just steamed. Yeah. And I've got chicken wings for tomorrow. So those are kind of my staples. I go back and if I can get fresh fish. I hate to have to wrap things up, but you're so good.
Oh,
what is it you think everyone right now should start implementing in their lives? I would say removing seed oils is probably one.
Yeah, the things we've kind of already talked about.
But anything else you think we're missing?
I would just encourage people to really, and maybe this is just the time that I'm in and I've seen a lot of this going around, but don't kind of get the blinders on and look at your own journey and be very careful about comparing your journey to someone else's and just pay a lot of attention. And it can be very easy on social media to get so much like almost information overload where it becomes, paralyzing in a lot of ways. And so, I think everyone starts their journey somewhere and is somewhere right now and just really focus on one thing that you can do, an actionable item that will improve your health, that you can make a habit and just do the other thing and do one more thing and do one more thing as time goes. And I really just want to encourage people that it's a journey, and all of us who have seemingly made it in the nutrition space and all this other stuff, we still battle the journey every day. And so I just want to encourage somebody that wherever you are, wherever you're starting, just take one step forward. That's all that's really required. And before you know it, you'll be at your goal.
And eat more fat and meat and you'll be fine.
Yeah, and protein and all the things.
And protein, all that.
Yeah, and focus on what you're doing. I love it. Thank you so much, Lisa. This was really fun.
Great job today. All the information about you, your social media, in the show notes, and everybody will get healthy starting today.
I believe it.
Thanks for listening to the Lisa Fisher Said podcast. Be sure to hit subscribe and download all the episodes and leave a review, won't you? The Lisa Fisher Said podcast is produced by ClantonCreative.com.